All right, everybody. We are live with Philip Jones from 3D Tech Innovations, one of the only professional lure designers I have been able to find, really, and
Yeah,
never mind get to talk to me. There's a lot of like top secret squirrel stuff going on in the industry. Have you noticed that? Like, no one talks to
yeah.
anybody.
Trust me,
It's
I've seen a lot of that for sure. There's
it's
very few of us.
Yeah. And then, I just randomly one day searched on LinkedIn for like a lure designer and found this one random guy in Florida and sent him a message. And he just like completely ignored me and was like, yeah, no, I'm not going to talk to you.
Interesting.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool. So, I had this to lead it off. Like, I always ask this question to people that are, I want to say in the industry, but not necessarily like professional fishermen. And that is, do you actually fish?
Oh yeah. I
Yeah.
love fish. I've been fishing my whole life, and that's really how I got into lure design. Is that I was doing the tournament bass scene, trying to want to be a pro fisherman, and thought it was the coolest thing. This was when like the Elite Series was like at its pinnacle, probably with all the heavy hitters. It wasn't split, and so bass fishing's heyday it seemed. And yeah, it's a crazy story of how it got started. But yeah, I love to fish. Fish probably like once a week. So
Awesome. So bass fishing is your
yeah,
your deal? Yeah,
absolutely bass fishing.
that's cool. I just kind of started bass fishing. I grew up saltwater fishing my whole life, so
Yeah,
redfish, speckled trout, flounder, Gulf of Mexico, and so but those bass pull pretty hard, man. Like I was kind of always poo-pooing them, like, oh yeah, no, you're lame, like compared to a redfish, and then I hooked what I thought was a monster. It was like a less than 2 pound bass, and I was like,
yeah,
this is crazy. So
no
yeah,
doubt.
so it's pretty cool. And the
Yeah,
interesting thing that I find about bass fishing industry is that that seems to be where I assume because it's the largest kind of market, but that's where I'd say most of the innovation comes from in lure design. Is that kind of what you see?
yeah, it definitely is. And I've thought a lot about that too. It's like bass fishing is so interesting because if you look on Tackle Warehouse or any retailer, there's hundreds of lures, if not thousands of lures out there, all to catch the same species of fish. And that's just so interesting to think about all the ways that you can catch the same species of fish all across the country. It just turned, into this massive industry. And so it is cool. I'm certainly waiting for that sort of innovation to happen in other species uh, lures as well. I think it's coming, but bass fishing is certainly unique in that way.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the stuff in North America, but then you go over and look at the Japanese with their like, BFS stuff, and it's just like,
Yeah,
whoa, like that is nuts. I saw this
yeah,
crazy
absolutely.
one that had it's like a soft plastic, but it had like a it wasn't a heart, it was a molded soft plastic like lip in it. It
Yeah,
was all soft plastic, and so it created this crazy action, which of course I then had to go off and try to design one myself. But
yeah,
that's just like nutty stuff, man.
yeah. The Japanese are super creative, and that's just their whole culture in general. But especially the lures, it's a dream trip for me to probably go to Osaka and eat some great sushi and check out the bass fishing culture there.
Yeah, for sure. Of course, someone shows up at my door. Um, so, what's your if you had like one lure to fish with, what would it be?
Really, really love swim baits. Whether it's a glide bait or a jointed swim bait, I just I like fishing them, but they typically lure in the largest fish. You're going after some of the largest fish in the lake, at least trying to. And the way that they operate or the way you fish them is it's just a fun way to fish for me. I think.
Awesome. So, how did you talk about your trying to make it as a professional bass angler, which I can't think of anything harder to do personally.
Yeah,
But
no
so how
kidding.
did you kind of change direction and go into lure design?
So it was. I had a boat, and doing the whole thing, trying to make it fishing constantly. Put a lot of hours on that boat, and I ended up blowing my motor. Uh, 6 cylinder went out, very expensive to fix, and had a lot of downtime during that. And I was living with my grandfather while I was in school at Alabama in Tuscaloosa, and he's a master woodworker, craftsman, has built furniture and shelves and cabinets, all sorts of stuff. And I ran the idea by him to build a fishing lure out of wood. I was going to carve it, and he was going to help me out, and we were going to work on it together. And we did. It's actually framed. See that one up there, that wooden one right there. It's actually framed. That's the first lure I ever did. But I very quickly realized that I am not a good carver. I don't want that to be how I make my money. So ended up downloading a CAD software. I don't think it was Fusion 360 at first. I tried something, and that was not very user friendly. And ended up downloading Fusion and just played around with it for a while, and struggled to learn it. And while I was going to school for mechanical engineering, it just kind of blended in, and kind of learned engineering side and the lure design side at the same time. And so that's kind of how I got started. All was because my motor blew up, and now I make lures. It's crazy.
Yeah, it sounds like I technically own a boat, but like it's had a blown up motor for like 2 years, and it's just like, no, dude. Like I don't want
to bust out another 1,000, as they call
Yeah,
it.
exactly, man. It's just like it's a 71 Mako. It's a cool boat, but it's got like an 88 Evinrude on it that apparently has some really bizarre carburetor that they made for like 1 year, and they don't make it anymore because it sucks. So I'm just like, oh man, I'll just throw my kayak in the back of the truck and go fishing, like, instead of messing with that. So did you actually end up getting a degree in mechanical engineering?
No, not yet. Still working on that. Enrolled in online school, but when I took the job at 6 Cents, I left school full time to pursue that. It was a dream job. It is what I wanted to do if I had finished school, but still working on it. So
yeah, that's cool. That's kind of like me. Like I kind of made it through college, but then I got a job and bailed out and never went back. So
when you pay your own way, it can be tough.
Yeah, exactly, man. Yeah, I was paying most of my own way at the time too. So I was like, well, I think I'll just go work. Like that sounds better. So
yeah.
And it's interesting because I think there's definitely a market for what you do, obviously from design and your experience in fishing and everything. And so that was a tipping point for me as I was in school taking IT classes that felt like they were already, I don't know, a decade behind of what I was actually doing. And so I was like, okay, this is crazy. So what did you guys use, like something like SolidWorks at school or something?
Yeah, I mean, even in mechanical engineering school, like there were 2 classes on the entire list of classes you had to take, requirements for your degree, that were CAD based classes. One of them was like intro to CAD. It's the SolidWorks class, and it was rudimentary. It was easy, and you don't really dive into it much. I think if you really want to go the CAD route, you probably want to go to more of a technical school and learn CAD, but you don't get some of the engineering background, obviously, that you would for an engineering degree. But no, just primarily taught Fusion myself. A lot of YouTube University, and a few people along the way helped me out, point me in the right direction for sure.
That's cool. The hardest thing for me for learning Fusion was like, there's like this vocabulary that I didn't know. So like it's easy if like, okay, I want to do a loft, like I'll go look for, how to do a loft in Fusion 360, but I had no idea like that was even a thing. And so that was the difficult thing for me. That's what took me the most time, I think, is watching enough videos to be like, okay, like here's like I don't even know if we want to call it basics, but here's the things you can do. And like, okay, then you get into those like individual things in detail, and like, here's all the tips and tricks, if you will, all the gotchas, and just going through it. I was looking at some of my first like Fusion 360 projects, and ooh, man, they were rough.
Mine as well. I think it's like with all software, though. I mean, there's there's buttons that you use or tools that you use 80% of the time, and there's tools you use probably 20% of the time. And there's, I mean, maybe even some you don't ever touch depending on the software or your application or what you're trying to get out of it. But Fusion has a lot of tools, and they seem to be creating more and more. But it's a good program for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So then, so you mentioned you went to work for 6th Sense. What was like kind of your first lure you designed for those guys?
First one I ever did, that was the Vega Frog.
Okay.
Jumped right into that design. Took quite a while to make it to market, and that was an interesting one. Understanding uh, understanding how to create something that is not completely solid as a silicone body. There was some hiccups with that, but ended up working out pretty well, I think.
And so do you, and if any time I ask you a sensitive 6th Sense question,
Yeah,
feel free to pass it off. But I'm just kind of, I'm fascinated by like, did you work on that by yourself? Was there a team? What does that structure look like?
Well, I don't ever want to say it was like completely by myself. I think some of the original artwork or, exterior details came from the owner of 6th Sense. He had a 2D drawing that he had made quite a while prior to when I was employed there. And so he handed that to me, and then I created those.
I'm still not sure about that.
Siri yelling at me. But yeah, so I took his 2D artwork and created most of the details in the form space and Fusion. And so yeah, I definitely can't take credit for all of it, but I was the only designer there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a team effort for sure.
Wow, that seems like rather difficult to take, what I assume was some sort of penciled sketch painting or something and turning it into actual functional lure. Did he give you any dimensions or anything, or are you just totally winging it?
You kind of get some length, direction. You want it to be sort of in the overall market specs most of the time, at least when you're aiming to sort of fill a gap in the market or be in that same product line, product category. But yeah, I feel like that's probably what I've done the most, is take people's 2D artwork, or even just an idea, and try to quickly create some sort of 3D concept for them. So a lot of repetition.
Yeah, that's cool. So was there like you mentioned like meeting kind of either a gap in the market or something slightly outside the market. Is there like a team that kind of feeds that data in at you don't have to talk about 6th Sense specifically, but in the industry, is it like, okay, we need to go into the top water frog market, so the owner of 6th Sense goes through his filing cabinet and is like, oh yeah, I got this thing I drew back 5 years ago, let's do this one? That's
something like that. I mean, I think the way that it works across the industry is that you have people who know product, whether they have worked in the industry for a long time, or whether they came from a different corporate style company and they have a knowledge of fishing, background in fishing. They understand that, hey, this product is selling pretty well. We want to create our own. Or sometimes they'll just analyze it from, there's nothing in this sort of product category, and they try to attack it that way. And they'll come to somebody like me and say, can we make something like this? Does it seem possible? Can we get the costs to where they need to be? That sort of thing. So it can be a long process for sure. But I think every case is different.
Yeah. So how much did you have to take into account, manufacturing processes in your design, right? I assume the silicone body frog is probably injection molded silicone. I would assume something like that.
It's roto molded in order to get the
silicone. Okay. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Cool.
You definitely have to take it into consideration when you're designing things like the internals, the hard baits. You got to make sure that you can pull the body out from the actual two-piece mold and that's a draft angle analysis and making sure that you don't have any overhangs or anything like that. So it helps to have some background in, or at least an idea as far as manufacturing.
Because most, if not all, of the hard baits are just kind of glued together halves that are injection molded out of, I assume, some ABS type plastic.
Yes, correct.
Yeah. So yeah, that's what drew me to the 3D printing side. It was like, okay, we can do things in 3D printing that you couldn't do in mass production, injection molded hard plastic. So I haven't really found anything too exciting there yet, but I'm holding out hope that there's some kind of interesting things to do there. Like at least on soft plastics, from a mold standpoint, I don't really care about undercuts. I don't care about machinability of a mold because I'm just going to 3D print it, right? So you can do some interesting things there that you can't, every time I say can't in front of a machinist, they yell at me. So they're like, I got this Doosan 5000 axis, blah, 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 I can do that with. And so I try to stay within the realm of most normal people's capabilities.
Well, no, that's what you said there, though, about 3D printing sort of being having more uses as far as end manufacturing than a CNC machine is. That's something outside of fishing that I'm just super excited about. Like 3D printing is growing so quickly. Metal 3D printing, as well as soft rubbery material 3D printing. Super excited about that. Like Adidas has a pair of shoes that I'm just in love with, and the soles are 3D printed on a carbon 3D printer. And I just think that's the coolest thing. Is like you can get 3D printed soles for your shoes now, and eventually you'll be able to get full on end use metal 3D prints. And anyway, not to derail the fishing conversation.
Yeah, no, that's cool, man. I mean, 3D printed
awesome.
fishing here, man. So it's all good. It's all in line. Yeah, I looked at those carbon machines because it's like, okay, yeah, maybe I can swing one of these to have something different. And I was like, not really, dude. And then the metal stuff with the, you have to have, most of them you have to have a sintering oven and stuff like that. So I was like, okay,
a lot of space, a lot of money.
not there yet. So yeah, I mean, I think that's going to be super interesting. I don't think that stuff, I mean, I could be wrong, but I don't think that stuff's ever really going to push down to where people are going to get their fishing lures from like buying some file online and printing it on their home metal printer. But I think that, from a manufacturing standpoint, I think that's going to be super fascinating to watch, because I think someone smarter than me is going to come along and you're going to figure out like, okay, we can do things that we can't do in traditional manufacturing. And that's going to kind of kick off kind of a new, I don't know, style or just a new kind of wave of innovation in the lure space.
Yeah, it's like you said, you need to understand your design for its end manufacturing use. If your end manufacturing is 3D printing, then it opens up a whole new realm of design. It's exciting for sure.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. And so we kind of touched on it earlier, but what software did you use at 6th Sense? And then like what software are you using now? Like, did they have any corporate standards or anything that you had to stay on?
No, I just I use Fusion 360. I don't know what they do at 6th Sense, but I've used Fusion 360 for probably the past like five or so years personally, and so recently I've been getting to ZBrush. It's more of a mesh modeling software that you can achieve things that you just can't even try in Fusion 360. It just can't handle that many polygons, that many faces, and so really excited about that. Try to continue to develop some really lifelike looking lure models, fish models, whatever you might want to call them. So yeah, Fusion 360 primarily, probably 90%, 80%, and then the rest in ZBrush. If that's, like you said, the design for the end design. If it's for 3D printing, then I can go to ZBrush. If the end is injection mold, then it has to stay in Fusion.
Yeah, because I've tried to go, back and forth before between, a B-Rep to a mesh and then back, and it never turns out right. Like they've made a lot of strides, I think, recently, but it's still not there. Like it just can't handle any sort of dense mesh at all. It just turns it into kind of a big blob of goop. So
right.
But that's, again, like you mentioned, with 3D printing, like you could do it all in Blender or ZBrush or whatever mesh thing you wanted to, and like you don't necessarily care other than, maybe getting your measurements correct, which I find hard to do in those programs. But
well, that's why I use Fusion 360 for the initial design, is so I can dimensionalize the overall body. And when you go from Fusion to ZBrush, you don't lose the overall dimension. Sometimes it'll output into millimeters, but like if you built it to be 6 inches, it will be 6 millimeters in software sometimes, but you can get around that.
Yeah, I've forced myself, and I don't even want to say I learned the metric system. I like vaguely understand millimeters. I actually have a ruler with millimeters and inches like taped to my desk, and so I can kind of get an idea of where I'm going. But
Nice.
it's I don't know it to where I can be like, okay, yeah, that is 12 millimeters. Like I'm not there yet, but
Right.
it's since all the 3D printers just talk millimeters, I just thought it was easier that way. That's awesome. So back to 6th Sense real quick. Like, so they didn't really have any, like, how were you handing that stuff off to manufacturing? You were just sending them like a step file or something, or?
Yeah, I don't know if I want to go too much into.
Okay, yeah, that's fine.
But
I'm just, I'm just somewhat fascinated that they didn't have like some sort of standard of like, hey, this is how we design and manufacture lures.
Yeah, well, it's
cool.
just it's a growing company. It's young,
Yeah.
and things change rapidly in growing companies, and so you just have to kind of be pliable and be willing to, flex a little bit. So
go with the flow for sure. I wonder, like, I just, do you have any idea on how, like, the really big guys do it, like Pure and Rapala and those guys? Like, you ever talk to anybody that works over there or anything?
yeah, I've talked to a few of them at both those companies. As far as what they do from initial concept to final product, I'm not exactly sure. The crazy thing about the industry is that China has a lot of designers, and so they can do what you want. It might take them longer. There might be a language barrier, but they can certainly do it. There's a lot of talented people in China, and so it makes it hard for people like me in the States, trying to gain business or trying to grow my own business. China can do it quickly, but I think my advantage is knowing fishing very well, growing up fishing. If you mention, hey, I want something along this product line, I know exactly what you're asking for, and can create a similar model pretty quickly. So
yeah, I try to have someone on I think it was like Upwork or one of those sites they're in a foreign country, they didn't know anything about fishing, and I like sent them a vague idea of a crankbait, and I got back something that was not, like, it wasn't going to work. Like it looked like a crankbait, but it wasn't going to work, right?
Yeah, so, absolutely.
I think my experience in the software world with when you have a language barrier like that, and not to say that they don't know how to do the work, it's just the kind of the translation, things get lost, and if they aren't fishermen, then it becomes very difficult to speak with them and talk to them about, okay, I want this kind of wobble. Well, wobble is not an engineering term, right? So
yeah,
thumping tail is not
run
an
into
engineering
that
term.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so yeah, it's like if you can deliver them specs, they will absolutely execute on those specs. But anything outside of that, it gets a little tricky.
Yeah, no, you're definitely right.
For sure. So what is your kind of favorite lure that you've designed so far?
Probably the 6 Sense Trace. We worked on that for a while. I think as far as like the cosmetics, the exterior details, I felt like I did as close as I could in Fusion 360 to replicate a fish, specific fish, and then the way that it functions as well. I thought it ended up being a pretty good project. I was very happy with it. That's the crazy thing about fishing lures, is that people think you do all this intricate work to fool fish, and to some degree you do, but primarily it's to catch the eye of the fisherman. It's just like anything else. Like you're marketing that product. You're marketing, the level of detail that it has, and the fish aren't buying it. So it's
Right.
definitely, you want to make it stand out on a shelf. So
Yeah, I don't know if you saw Marling Bates does a video where he catches a bass on a square block of wood, So
yeah, exactly.
it's
Fish, man. Sometimes though, fish are like the smartest creatures, and then sometimes they're the stupidest. So
Yeah.
there's no in between. But yeah, and Marlon Bates got super talented. That's the level of wood carving that I thought I could be. Probably should just stick with cat.
Yeah, no, man, I do not have that kind of patience and
That's exactly what it is.
ability.
Patience.
It's just like,
just start hacking away at that block of wood.
I would only be able to produce like asymmetrical baits, and it would just not be good. That's why I just kind of naturally gravitated to the CAD side. It's like, okay, like it's gonna handle that, what I consider mundane stuff of symmetry. Like, yeah, it's gonna handle that for me, so it's much better.
There's no undo button too when you're carving a piece of wood.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, I've done that. I did that for a little while. I tried to make like a super simple like popper, and it was like I just got distracted and hit it too hard with a sander, and it was like toast. I was like, okay, dude, I can't handle this.
For
sure. It
sure.
was brutal. So how did you why did you decide to kind of start your own design company?
Yeah, it's a good question. I thought there was a big need in the industry for these services. I've always been passionate about starting my own business. So it just felt like the right time, really. And I'm excited. It's different, but I'm excited to try to face some of those challenges. I can handle the design stuff. The business stuff is what was always so intimidating, and seeing it, a small business, you're like, it's a lot that goes into it. It's so difficult to run a successful business, no matter the size. But I think as long as it's initially just me and putting out a product and working with businesses and understanding their needs, I think I can certainly try to deliver what they're looking for.
Yeah, that's what I've started several small businesses throughout my life, and it's always the business part that's the hard part, right? Like whatever you're doing, like that's the easy part, but
that's what you can handle for sure.
Yeah, the billing and all that kind of mess, and LLCs versus S corps, and that stuff that's the really hard stuff. So
yeah, absolutely. Trying to pay people to take care of that for me, so I can focus on the CAD design. It's easy.
That's the way to do it for sure. Yeah, just outsource all that stuff. And nowadays, like, it's super easy. Like, it costs money, obviously, but everybody's online. Everybody, QuickBooks, you can hire accountants right out of QuickBooks these days. So.
Yeah, you're exactly right, and that's one of the reasons why too. I want to start my own business, is because the age of the internet, it's never been easier to run a business. It doesn't mean it's easy, but it's never been easier to sort of get yourself started and to market yourself through social media and try to build your own brand, build your own company, and go from there. Be independent. So
awesome. So we have a question from the audience. My good buddy Norris, who is actually in Dallas. I think all awesome fishing lure designers are in Texas at this point. So he wants to know, when you're sitting down and you're like, okay, I'm going to design this lure, do you start in the form editor, or do you go like straight sketches and parametric?
Well, is that before or after, got some 2D base drawing? Because I think that's really important, is starting with your model idea. You put that down on paper. It gives you a really good sense of direction when you go in. But to answer the question specifically, it does depend on the design a little bit. I think the majority of the time it's the form space. That's where you can quickly create a round body and go from there. But if it's something that I know is going to be based more on I guess sharper edges is probably the way to describe that. Thought is you kind of go into some parametric editing and modeling and create it through surface modeling or just solid lofts and extrusions.
All right, now I guess I'm gonna have to dive into the forms that are all the cool kids are doing it. So
yeah, you definitely need to. It's awesome for sure.
yeah, I've done some cool stuff in there lately. I designed this crazy creature bait that I did mostly in the forms editor, and so I felt pretty proud of that. I was like, okay, I made it out of there alive with a functional bait. So and I do have a wake bait that I did in there previously. So but I don't know, man. I guess I'm just too much of a nerd, because you mentioned 2D drawing. Like I just start with the numbers in my head and I put them into user parameters, and then I use those user parameters everywhere because I can't draw at all. So when you're cooking up a lure yourself, do you actually do like a 2D drawing to start?
I'll say it always turns out better when you do. It's, somebody told me about CAD, and it's true in a lot of things, but garbage in, garbage out. It's, design intent is a word or phrase used in engineering, CAD design specifically, is know where you're headed and where you start early on. If you kind of know your end goal, then you can build in some parameters that you can change quickly, and it won't slow you down if you need to go back and make edits. But yeah, it definitely helps to have some good base sketches for sure.
Yeah, that's just the fact of knowing where you're heading, I find is like super important, because some days I'll sit down, I'm like, okay, I don't even know what I'm making. I want to try some specific technique, and halfway through I was making a creature bait, and then halfway through I'm making a a crankbait, and it never works out at all. Yeah. So definitely having the end goal in mind, I find really helps me at least keep it tight, and don't make too many mistakes along the way. So
yeah, absolutely.
That's really cool. So, what are some, and I have to spill all the secrets, but what are some things that the normal fisherman doesn't know necessarily about the lure making business?
I think the biggest, I guess, unknown or misconception about the industry is, and it seems to be true in a lot of industries, this is the case, but most products are made at a handful of places. And that's just the reality of business. There's a few people who have large scale manufacturing equipment. It costs a lot to get started, and so not everybody is opening up mass manufacturing businesses in their garage, and the big companies just continue to get bigger as the small companies start. But yeah, that's true here in the States and overseas. Just most products are being made at a handful of places for sure.
Yeah, I designed this frog lure for a guy, and I think did he ended up going to D&J? It's like they're in, I think, Arkansas or something like that. It's like
Alabama.
They're one of the only soft plastic lure manufacturers in the States, and they do like everybody's that still wants to manufacture in the state. They do everybody's soft plastic lures. So and then just the other day I was like, there's a small bait company down here called Deadly Dudley. I don't know if you've heard of those guys before. Okay. And they had a video of their, I guess, manufacturing facility, but they have one injection machine that they make all their baits from, but they do it in house. And I was kind of shocked that they did that because they had, they were just like in a room like this with a giant plastisol injection machine, doing probably like 10 at a time. I think, it wasn't huge, but it was like they do a bag at a time basically in their shop. So and then I said, okay, like maybe I'll go looking for one of those machines just to see. And like, you can't even find those to buy. Like, I guess people have them custom manufactured or something like that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it was. And so that's interesting because, then the barriers just get higher and higher and higher. And, would you guess that like a majority of hard plastic baits come out of China?
I would say the overwhelming majority of
Yeah.
hard plastic baits, and it doesn't matter what company.
Right.
It's just the nature of the beast when it comes to manufacturing. If there was a bait to be made in the States by a company and hand painted by an individual, you'd be paying $19.99 for that bait that in China could be $9.
Right.
So it's
Yeah.
just how it is.
Well, we clearly all need to be in that crazy swim bait game, right? Of those guys that charge like $900 for swim baits and stuff like that. Like,
It's good when you can get it if you're one of
yeah, I
the
guess so.
OGs. For sure. A lot of those builders are super talented, and
Oh yeah,
some of
absolutely,
them been
man.
around for a long time. But it is crazy. You see those people, and I've wanted a few myself, but man, it's when you can build them, it's hard to buy them for that price.
Yeah, I mean, it's to me that's like art. It's not like
100%.
I would be petrified to throw that in any body of water anywhere, right? Because
Yeah,
I'd snag it within 2 seconds and it would be gone.
yeah.
So
I think fishing lures to me is art. It's like functioning art, and that's the way that I've always looked at it and enjoyed it. I just found it so interesting to just make the most realistic looking design that I can. It's just fun. It's just one of those things that I guess just passionate about. And never or haven't stopped trying for a while, but it's certainly an artistic aspect to it as well.
yeah, for sure. And there's no like shortage of creatures that fish eat, right? To make new lures out of. So there's some guys that I know down in Tasmania that are making these crazy squid lures.
Oh wow.
I mean, they're nuts, like super ultra realistic squid lures, and it's like, okay, like I don't really fish with squid that much, but that's pretty cool, and all the bugs and nymphs and whatever in the world, like you'll never run out of things to make for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then some jackass will come along with a block of wood and catch a fish. So
yeah, absolutely.
awesome, man. So how if someone's interested in getting you to design a lure for them, how do they get in contact with you?
You can certainly email me at Philip at 3D Tech Innovations, and that's Philip with one L. Or you can just reach out to me on Facebook as well as LinkedIn. We can go over any design needs that you have, whether it's just CAD design, 3D printing, or 3D rendering. So I'll kind of offer a handful of things. So certainly Facebook or LinkedIn, or email me directly.
Awesome. And I'll have that information in the description down in the video in this post on YouTube as well. So one more quick question. How long does that process usually take from, let's say someone comes to you with, a design they've scribbled on a piece of paper to, you kind of got them set in the right direction with I don't know if you call it a final product from your end with just a fully functioning CAD design.
Well, that what you said right there is sort of the big kicker in that equation. But usually takes around 3 weeks to a month, maybe, as far as an idea to a final CAD design that I would be happy with, as well as the client would be happy with. But it just depends on the project. There's things that are relatively simple that people are looking to have done, and there's certainly things that are very complex. So
absolutely, yeah. And do you do I saw on your website that you do have a 3D printer, so do you offer like prototyping along the way, or how do you handle that?
Yeah, absolutely. Trying to help companies with prototyping as well. There's all sorts of rapid 3D printed molds that you can make. I think I've seen some of yours that you make as well, and so that's something that I would offer to a company or a client who's looking for some prototyping. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's been kind of I know a few small local bait makers that I've helped with their stuff, and from what they tell me, it's like they feel like they can innovate a lot quicker because of the 3D printed molds, because it is less time consuming to produce, but also way less costly, right? Even their buddy machinist is going to charge them like $600, and for me, in materials, it's like $10-20 a mold. And so
Yeah.
even if I throw in time and stuff, I get to about $100. Where prototyping baits at $100 versus $1,000, like you can iterate a lot faster and get more designs out there. It's been a real interesting thing for them, for sure.
Absolutely right. If you can even find a machinist that'll cut you a single cavity mold, they don't want to waste their time with that. They want the big jobs. So that's what I do think is the advantage of a 3D printed mold is you're not going to shoot 1,000 baits through it, but you can definitely get where you want to be as far as the final product goes without investing too much money.
Yeah, I'm up to 250 shots in one of my molds so far. So
that's good.
Yeah, it's been holding up really well. So usually, like, what the most common way they fail is you drop them and they break.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the one advantage aluminum has. But yeah, it was funny. Like when I first started designing lures, I went on Facebook, and down in Houston we have a lot of machine shops that try to get work in the oil and gas industry, and so there were guys that were like, yeah, hey, I'll cut your parts for you, blah, blah, blah. So I was like emailing those guys saying, hey, I got this mold. It's in fusion. It's like ready to go. And they're like, no, man, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
They want to turn out, whatever, 1,000 couplers or something, like it's super
yes,
easy.
one part they can program and just cut over and over again, which I understand. Hey, it's, no one wants to program one thing, cut it one time and be done. Takes a lot of time.
Yeah, because then I was like, okay, well, I'll just get a CNC machine and do it myself. And then I started trying to learn CAM, and I was like, oh my God, now I understand why they don't want to do this.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
It's a whole nother setup of CAD design. You're spending just as much time in CAM as you are in the CAD. So
yeah, exactly. I was like, it was really frustrating for me because I was like, why do I have to tell it what tool I'm going to use? Like, it's a computer. Like, I should tell it the tools I have, and it should figure out which tool I should use. Like, but yeah, one day it'll get there, and we'll have like CAD machines that 3D print. So
absolutely
awesome, man. Well, hey, thanks a ton for talking to us today. Really appreciate all your insights. And again, I'll have all of his Philip's information down below. You can reach out to him for all of your lure design needs.
Yeah, well, thanks, Bill. I really appreciate it. Looking forward to seeing the video.
All right, man. Take care.
Bye.